Good evening, everyone. Today we are going to discuss about underdevelopment and deprivation. See, this is very important topic for your examination point of view also. Here we are going to discuss various definitions are there for defining underdevelopment and diversity of underdeveloped countries, concept of deprivation, characteristics of underdeveloped countries, and what are the factors hindering economic development? What are the factors that promoting the economic development? That we are going to discuss. So here, yeah, when we are talking about the according to Human Development Report, more than three-fourths of the world population is living in developing countries, but they enjoy only 15% of the world's income, with richest 20% have 85% of the global income, according to Human Development Report. So when we are talking about the underdevelopment, generally the term itself it's showing underdeveloped country. It relates to the countries. Those countries are having less per capita income. We are talking about underdevelopment, whose countries per capita income is very low or less per capita income. We call it as underdeveloped countries. Even though they have, when we observe their geographical conditions, even though they are abundant in natural and human wealth resources at disposal, most of the Western economists, particularly, they said that the development is particularly lack of underdevelopment, according to them. So here, some other economists, they defined underdevelopment using in different criteria. It may be, based on the population and the land ratio, ratio of industrial output and the total output, and per capita income of the people or population. So these are the, certain indicators to define the underdevelopment. Generally, when we talk about according to Ragnar Natz, countries having low per capita income when compared to its population and natural resources, we define as a underdevelopment. Which countries are having low per capita income compared to the population and natural resources, we call it as underdevelopment. There are other definitions also there. Development, particularly the underdevelopment, as a state where there is a relatively low per capita income and a slow increasing productive capacity of the country. When we are talking about underdevelopment, these countries are having low per capita income and their productivity capacity is very low. They are using traditional methods. They are not using in a proper manner the resources, not utilizing in a proper manner. So that is the reason why productive capacity is very low in these underdeveloped countries. So here the diversity are underdeveloped countries. When we refer to this term underdeveloped countries, we come across particularly with the different nations when we compare the countries. The term underdeveloped or underdeveloped or less developed or backward countries, these are, we can use synonyms for the underdeveloped countries. So here, when we talk about the characteristics, this is important for your examination point of view. When we talk about the characteristics of underdeveloped countries, see, we can observe most of the Western economists, they think that underdeveloped countries just lack of development. According to them, lack of development is comes under the underdeveloped. So in this point of view, when we look at the characteristics, Latin America, African countries, Asian countries, these countries are characterized, comes under the underdeveloped countries. Most of the Latin American countries are underdeveloped. African countries are underdeveloped. Some of the Asian countries also comes under the underdeveloped countries. So what is the differentiation between developed and underdeveloped countries? How do we identify? Just when we look into the characteristics in these countries, particularly, we can observe low per capita income of the country. These underdeveloped countries per capita income, average income of the people is very low in these underdeveloped countries. And also these countries, there are different between country to country, particularly these underdeveloped countries, because it maybe depends on their geographical conditions, area of the country, and the population size of the country, how they are getting income resources, and how within the resources how they are utilizing, and occupational structure also decides whether the country is underdeveloped or not. These variations between or among the countries are different, and external dependency also, role of the government also influence, economic inequalities in the country, poverty also difference between the countries, historical background and political power structure also among these underdeveloped countries varies. Differentiation will be there. So most of the developed countries, when we observe, when we look at, these are the common characteristics we can easily identify among these underdeveloped countries. So one of the important characteristic of these underdeveloped countries is low GNP and low per capita income. See, this per capita GNP is considered to be, as a whole economic development of the country. Underdeveloped countries, particularly, their existence of low per capita income when we compare to the developed countries. Underdeveloped countries per capita income is very low when we compare with developed countries. So the term per capita income, it reflects sometimes, standard of living of the countries. So when we are saying per capita income is very low, then absolutely their standard of living of these underdeveloped countries are very low. This is also indicator. So when we are telling standard of living of the people is very low, the people in underdeveloped countries are living in a miserable conditions. They die, very early. That is the reason why we are telling their living up standard or living up standard of the people is very low. So per capita income is very low, as I said, compared to the developed countries. And there is a huge inequalities in per capita income between underdeveloped countries and developed countries. Among the people, there is a huge differentiation between the per capita income and underdeveloped countries. According to IMF World Economic Outlook 2018, the world average per capita income around 11,368 countries. So when we observe the countries, particularly with the highest per capita income are Luxembourg and Switzerland, Norway. These countries are developed and their per capita income is very high. So the countries which are having low per capita income, particularly yeah, right. Sorry for the inconvenience. So here we are talking about low per capita income. So generally the underdeveloped countries, their per capita income is very low. These countries per capita income, when we compare to the developed countries, their per capita income is very low. That we have to remember. See, as I said, developed countries per capita income, for example, now Luxembourg, 11 lakhs 30,954, their per capita income. But when we talk about the uh, underdeveloped countries or less developed countries, for example, South Africa, $6,509. Sri Lanka, $4,310. And India, according to India, 2,115. See the variation according to Economic Outlook 2018. There is a huge differentiation between the developed countries and developing countries when we are observe. So this is one of the characteristic that per capita income is very low. And the another one is low income inequalities and world spread poverty. Larger income inequalities are there and spreading the poverty. Poverty is very high, massive poverty we can observe in developing countries or underdeveloped countries. Large inequalities, the distribution of income and wealth in these countries are very large inequalities are there. Even India, there are growing according to the organization economic outlook cooperation development. When we are talking about that, according to 2011, the world health of when we talk about the rich people accounted but 17% of the GDP they are having. And when we talk about the developing countries, there is a income inequalities are larger than the developed countries. Income inequalities are very high in developing countries or underdeveloped countries when we compare with developed countries. So larger the income inequalities are there. Due to income inequalities, there is a huge poverty we can observe in underdeveloped countries. So mass poverty is another specific feature for underdeveloped countries. The extent of absolute poverty is an important dimension of inequalities in income distribution in developing countries. Income inequalities, we are telling, and poverty. So when we observe Latin African, Latin American countries, African countries, their massive poverty is we can observe because their per capita income is very low. Food scarcity will be there. malnutrition of food, ill health, scarcity of clothes, houses. No, these are the indicators of the poverty. So there is a mass poverty we can observe in underdeveloped countries. And the another one, predominance of agriculture sector with lower productivity. Most of the people underdeveloped countries are engaged in agriculture sector. They are depending on agriculture sector, and the share of the agriculture sector to the GDP is very no low, and they are providing employment opportunities, particularly because they engaged in agriculture sector only. So when we observe agriculture sector is insufficient in terms of output per capita or labor, when we because these countries are agriculture and allied sectors are generally we can count to 30 to 80% of the labor force are engaged in agriculture sector. So this is twice most of the Asian and African countries, according to 2011 census, 52% of the labor are depending on agriculture sector in India for their livelihood purpose. Around 50% of the people engaged in agriculture sector, particularly the productivity of labor as well as the per unit of land, we also observe very low in developing countries compared to the developed countries. Large proportion of the production, particularly for their self-consumption purpose only they are using. So the only less marketable surplus is available in these countries because most of the people are consuming their livelihood purpose. So old production techniques are they are using subsistence cultivation due to this, because it defects their primary sector. That is the reason why agriculture sector in these countries particularly not profitable and yield also not surplus income because they are using traditional methods. With the traditional method they are consuming self purpose and only little amount of surplus they are going to be sale in the market. So that is the reason why productivity also very low because they are not using advanced techniques. Population pressure is also one of the characteristic of uh, underdeveloped countries. Population pressure. The main problem of underdeveloped country when we observe India is high level of birth rate and falling the level of death rates. Birth rates are increasing, death rates are decreasing means there is a population pressure in the country. Due to high growth rate of the population size that increases very rapidly and high rate of growth in the third world countries, particularly these underdeveloped countries, that causes the effect of their underdevelopment. Fast population growth, the necessities particularly, as we said, higher growth of, order to maintain this, their standard of living is very difficult because the requirement of food, clothing, it may be shelter and medicines, schooling, they all are, required more. But in these countries, these are the providing for this is very low due to population pressure. Labor force increases due to increasing of the population growth that leads to underdevelopment of the any country. With low per capita incomes, their low capital formation, it it becomes difficult for underdeveloped countries to support and maintain the large population. As we know that capital is more important for development of the country. So underdeveloped countries, their capital formation is very low. So that leads to, because why it is due to population pressure. No, high proportion of dependents. This is main reason. Most of the proportion of the dependents, high density we can observe in underdeveloped countries compared to developed countries. Because see the differentiation, developed countries, for example, in China, 145 density. In America, 33 only. In Canada, only 4. But when we compare to the developing countries or underdeveloped countries, the population density is very high. For example, India, 382 population density. When we observe, due to low labor proportion rate, low literacy rate, decreasing female and male ratio, low female labor proportion or participation, overpopulation. These are the features of increasing the population size. Increasing the population size. So population pressure is there in the countries, particularly underdeveloped countries. Unemployment and disguised unemployment you can see in underdeveloped countries. So when we observe, unemployment is the another important characteristics of underdeveloped countries. Unemployment in both rural and urban areas, we can observe this is population pressure. Because of population pressure, agricultural land, most of the people are engaged in agriculture sector. That is the results in disguised unemployment. What is required in agriculture sector? More than that requirement engaged in agriculture sector, that is also one of the characteristic we can observe in underdeveloped countries. Seasonal unemployment also we can found in particularly rural areas. Laborers, they do not work, full working hours. Some people, they do not get, work in their, education and training also. Some are unable to earn income, sufficient manner. So these are the reasons for unemployment and a disguised unemployment. This is also one of the important character. Scarcity of capital formation or capital. Underdeveloped countries, the capital stock, the quantity of capital formation is very low because of capital formation is relatively low because due to mass poverty. When there is a huge poverty, their capital formation is very low. Underdeveloped countries, particularly, they characterized and capital poor and low savings, low investment economies. These underdeveloped countries, their income levels are very low. Their per capita income is very low. That is the reason why their savings also very low. Due to low savings, their investment also very low in these countries, particularly low underdeveloped countries. See, when we observe, particularly the saving does not rise or increase as their income levels as lag. So here, the reason for this demonstration effect, according to Knox, has said, everybody has great urge to imitate standard of living of the people, particularly prosper of their neighborhood. So another important characteristics when we observe technological backwardness. Most of the underdeveloped countries, they are using, traditional methods for their, because of the backwardness of the country. Lack of research, lack of underdevelopment, we can observe. So due to lack of research and underdeveloped development is, technological backwardness there in these countries. The main requirement for the country's new technologies is required, is available for the capital. Adequate number of trained personnels are important. But when we observe this, these countries, this technological backwardness is there. Skilled labor are not available because due to illiteracy, absence of labor, skilled labor, that hurdles for the spread of the modern options or modern technology or using of this technology is very low in these underdeveloped countries. Many underdeveloped countries, they are willingly opt for labor intensive technology because and this absence of social security against the unemployment and workforce. So due to this, using these traditional backward technologies, because of their unskilled labor are there, because of no illiteracy rate. Most of the people are illiterates, we can observe in underdeveloped countries. And also economic dualism. Economies of underdeveloped countries particularly characterized by existence of two different sectors, modern traditional subsistence. In modern sector, they improved production techniques and capital like machines, buildings they use and profit motivatives, labor, particularly wage laborers, people with modern attitude we can observe in the underdeveloped countries. So here, when we are talking about the modern sector, particularly modern economy that consisting of heavy industrialized and mechanized cultivation, modern and traditional, the transportation, banking system, insurances, trade, commerce, this capital intensity and productivity. Modern sector, we can observe this type of developments. So in these countries, particularly, in order to quite opposite of modern sector are developed countries. They in which exist rural areas, they call subsistence sector with traditional and world production techniques. The traditional, particularly that consisting of uh, tinny cottage industries and handcraft, small farming, labor intensive techniques they are going to be used. So low productivity rate also. So when we are talking about the subsistence economy, market has to know three main principles: lack of specialization, division of labor, production for self consumption purpose, and technology is starting. That is related to economic dualism. Regional dualism also there. Regional dualism is a common characteristic of underdeveloped countries. Regional dualism. According to Gunnar Myrdal, when we observe his point of view, this is indicator of underdevelopment. This regional dualism. He stated that underdeveloped countries, particularly characterized by large and increasing gap of productivity and income among the major regions and regional disintegration will be there. We can observe in the less developed countries. Unfavorable foreign trade, also one of the characteristic of underdeveloped countries. These countries, these underdeveloped countries particularly, they are, you know, trade oriented. They depend on much on exports of primary products and they neglect the sectors of the other sectors of the economy. As I said, underdeveloped countries are depending on agriculture sector. Most of the people are engaged in agriculture sector. Their exports also, primary goods which are related to the agriculture sector. The predominance of agriculture or primary goods in exports gives their, three important consequences when we, look into in this point of view. Exports do not show rising trend. Whatever these countries are exporting that are not showing, rising trend and unfavorable terms of trade. Whatever the products they are exporting, they are, unfavorable for terms of trade. They may be getting losses. And another important consequence, gains from or gains in agriculture due to new technology also go in favor of developing countries. Because of agriculture produce, they are disadvantaged compared to the international market, compared to the advanced countries, they are unfavorable for foreign trade. When we observe the another important characteristics, social and cultural political characteristics. Social and cultural political characteristics. See, generally, due to illiteracy, lack of factor mobility, downgrading, manual labor, these are the and important one is customs, traditional methods, joint family system, caste and religion systems, various divisions are there, various reasons are there, colonial rule, law, administrative setup, these all are found, the characteristics of underdeveloped countries. There is a illiteracy rate is very high, lack of factor mobility, okay, labor, they are using, traditional methods and customs, joint family system also there, caste and religions. All these characteristics, particularly, we can observe in, underdeveloped countries. So what are the factors that are hindering the economic development? So when we look at in this point of view, all the factors that are adversely affecting the development of the country. There are many factors that hinders, that influence to decrease the economic development, particularly obstacles, we can say that obstacles for the development of these countries. So there are mainly, when we observe, two categories. One is domestic obstacles, another one is international forces. These domestic and international forces are hindering the economic development. So here, particularly when we observe domestic obstacles, there are no VC circle poverty we can observe in this underdeveloped countries. According to Ragnar Nax, the problems of capital formation in underdeveloped countries, he has written this book. And in this book, he has clearly mentioned and explained the poor country is poor because of it is poor. Poor country is poor because of it is poor, according to Ragnar Nax. The less developed countries or underdeveloped countries, We can observe poverty is very high because due to low income levels, backwardness, they push again into the such a way to keep these countries to poverty. Due to low income, due to saving is low, due to low income, their savings are very low. Due to low savings, their investment is low. As a result, what will happen? Their productivity, their employment, and income levels are very low. Productivity low due to low investment, income levels are very low, employment opportunities are very low due to low investment. So the supply side vicious circle poverty, we can say that lower income against the lower saving, this is vicious circle poverty. So this vicious circle poverty in underdeveloped countries unable to come out from this problem. Income is low due to low income, low demand for the products. When there is a low demand, low investment will exist. When there is a low investment, low capital, low productivity, and a low production. Low production again causes to low income of the these countries. And when we talk about the marketable or market imperfection, in underdeveloped countries, we can observe imperfect market conditions are prevail in these countries. No, generally, market is fragmented into several market, particularly, same product or factors that, this can be, this the prices are distorted leading that that leads to use of market within the countries, whatever the resources are there, they are unable to use in a proper manner. So due to market perfection also imperfection also one of the reason for the obstacle or hindering the economic growth. Scarcity of capital. One of the important hindering the economic growth is scarcity of capital. Due to low capital formation rate, that leads to obstacles the hinder the economic development of underdeveloped countries. That we have to remember. And also, when we are talking about the other factors, inappropriate technology they are using. When they are using, uh, obstacle to development, particularly these third world countries, they they are using inappropriate technology, traditional methods they are using. Due to this, low capital stock leads to primitive their technologies. These countries having low productivity technology they are using, that they fail to generate the economic surplus because they are using this type of technology they are using. Particularly these countries, these cases, when we observe, they likely displace the labor, they increase unemployment rate, particularly the labor surplus economies, because they are using inappropriate technology they are using. These underdeveloped countries, particularly when we observe their population explosion will be available. What does it mean? Population explosion. No, it is relatively when we when we observe in real life, third world countries is nothing but underdeveloped countries. We underdeveloped countries, we also called as third world countries. So these countries particularly now passing through the second stage of demographic transition, and these countries mortality rate has been fall down steadily without corresponding decline in the birth rates. So that is what does it mean? Birth rates are increasing, death rates are decreasing. That leads to population exploitation or population explosion. And also institutional obstacles also there. Institutional obstacles. So when we observe, certain institutions which are promote economic development, and one of the main obstacles, saving, mobilization of institutions like bank, insurance companies, financial institutions, wage law, and scarcity of arrangements and land tenure system also one of the reason for obstacles are under the economic development. Transportation, communication services, which all are, and along with this, factor mobility also insufficient in these countries. Another important reason, socio-cultural obstacles. Socio-cultural obstacles. So this is also hinders the growth rate or economic development process, particularly in underdeveloped countries. Because we can observe joint family system that regards professional and geographical mobility of the people, fewer savings, less risk-taking attitude. These all are socio-cultural obstacles. Along with these, borrowed institutions, ecosystem or election system, adult franchises, administrative systems, particularly when you observe, these are borrowed from advanced countries, and they are unable to suitable also for these specific social, political, economic conditions of less developed countries. And also lack of urgent achieve. When we are talking about this on the theory of social changes proposed particularly, urge to achieve population is a core development. This lack of traditional and authorization societies. So lack of urge and achieve. Political and administrative factors also hindering the, you know, economic development. On the theory of social change, as I said, due to lack of urgent to achieve the growth. Political pressure and administrative factors also influence the economic development. So these countries particularly exploited under the colonial rule. Most of the existing political and administrative systems are borrowed from colonial rule. So imperialist powers through the global corporate forces still it influences the policies of underdeveloped countries. So political and administrative factors also hinder the economic development. As I said, administrative system which are created by colonial rule to exploit their native population and their forces. Then coming to the external obstacles, when we observe external or internal factors, foreign trade is said to be engaged to growth and development of the country. These are the institutional factors, as we can say that. The economists like Raul, Prebisch, and Singer, Lewis, Middle, they have developed a theory of world exploitation of less developed countries. How these countries are looted from the colonial period, how the exploitation was happened. So to over dependency of export of primary goods, instability of prices, adverse effect of fluctuations in international market do not help underdeveloped countries to their development. These international factors cannot help it. Demonstration effect. See, when we observe the international demonstration, which is explained by James Dusenberry, the developing countries, particularly luxuries, they follow luxuries and conspicuous consumption pattern of the people, particularly in developed countries. So this brings the changes in demand without changes in the resources of allocation, production structure also that leads to disequilibrium and instability. So these are the factors that are hinder or obstacles to economic development of the countries, developing countries particularly. So how to overcome these problems, these issues, and what are the factors that promote the economic development of these underdeveloped countries? So when we look into in this point of view, the factors that are promote economic development of the country that divided into two types. One is economic factors and the another one is non-economic factors. Economic factors and non-economic factors. See, economic factors, economists attached to, generally we are talking about economic factors, natural resources. When we the development of the any economy is natural resources that include land, area of land, soil conditions, how much percentage of the forest and water bodies, minerals and oil resources. Entire this ecosystem, the existence of these natural resources, particularly if they are abundant to promote economic development. See, Japan and Switzerland, best examples for the poor countries in terms of natural resources. So here, natural resources, when we utilize in a proper manner, that leads to increase the development of the country. Along with that, capital formation also one of the another important factor that to promote the economic development, capital formation. Then when we observe the capital means stack of physical reproducible means of production. We call it as capital. With the development of growth, economies in this post-World War, according to Harry-Domer growth model, particularly when we observe that it is a crucial factor in economic development. Growth model is treated as it is crucial factor for growth of the economic development of the country. So along with that, capital output ratio also important. According to Kuznets, it is almost an important aspect of particularly for promoting economic development. Capital output ratio. Another important capital formation. How much capital is required to produce a unit of output is said to be capital output ratio. This capital output ratio. Technological progress also leads to increase the economic development. Technology, particularly a systematic knowledge, certain related to the production or production process. Technology is related to methods of production, the technological changes. These changes as a result of new innovation or new technology, technological progress. This technological progress includes discovery, inventions, innovations, improvements of shape, quality of books, use of new material. These all are, you know, comes under the technological progress. Entrepreneurship and organization, particularly when we observe the entrepreneurship or organization, it plays an important role for growth process of any country, particularly underdeveloped countries. Optimum use of factors in production process that help the increasing the productivity of the factor production process and innovative. So entrepreneurship and organization is more influence for determine the economic development of the country. And also when we observe the structural changes that implies transaction from the traditional agricultural society to modern industrial economy. Structural changes has to be done. Then only we can say that the growth process has started. Without changes in agriculture sector to modern industrial sector, then there is a obstacle for economic development of the country. So this is the reason why structural changes are more required. Innovations, development, financial institutions, money market, capital market, infrastructure facility has to produce or and availability of entrepreneurs. The main aspect of structural changes is more important. Social attitude, family system, caste system, religious, you know, dogmas that we have to remember here. Foreign trade. Generally, the foreign trade is considered as an engine of economic growth. Foreign trade is considered as engine of economic development of any country. Economists like Mint, Rahul, uh, Professor Singer, Lewis, and Mirdal, they maintained the expand of market for surplus products, import scarcity products, and especially for capital growth. So when we are talking about the foreign trade, specialization is more required, division of labor, full utilization of proper resources, transport of knowledge, capital flow, this stimulating the demographic or domestic demand, promoting the competition to achieve the economic development of the country. Foreign trade is more important. So non-economic factors also influence social, institutional, cultural, and attitude. These are moral values for particularly for political and institutional conditions and non-economic factors. So non-economic factors, particularly when we observe Nagdarnats, economic development has much to do with human environment, social attitude, political conditions, and historical economics. These observe with non-economic factors. So social factors. When we are talking about social factor, no, positive and social attitudes are influence. Values and institutions are essential for economic development of the country. So the spread of this education and knowledge of the particularly uh, rigid caste system also there. Giant family system where individuals getting uncomfortable. So along with this social factors, there are another one also there, human factors. Human resources which are have been particularly the factors according to Adam Smith mentioned that wealth is not a health. So development of human resources are required, investment on health, education system, and training which enlarge the no human capacity, and that leads to efficiency of development. So along with this, social factors, there are other factors also there, political and administrative factors. We have to change the political pressure and administrative factors. Role of government also very important. Role of government also very important. So when we talk about the population and economic development, when we observe, there are, many factors, as I said, influence economic development. When we talk about the factors which are influencing the economic development, human resources are a key factors for economic development. Human resources are very important for economic development of the country. The population farm is the basic for the human resources. Population also very important. Availability of the manpower, human resources of the country, primarily they are depending on the size and the quantity or quality of the population of the country. Availability of the manpower, it depends on the size of the population, the quality of the population of the country. So population and economic development, when we observe availability of manpower and human resources in the country, that primarily depends on the size of the quality of population in the country. There are various reasons are there, particularly for population and economic development. That effects are particularly adversely affecting. So what are the factors influencing the economic development? Adverse effect, per capita income. See, generally, higher growth rate of population than the growth of GNP. That leads to growth of capita income and standard of living also increases in this interest. So here, food shortage also one of the important factor that influence the population and economic development. Shortage of food shortage. If the growth in the food production is inadequate, then the population growth creates serious or shortage of the food. This is also impact on population and economic development. So increase in the development of the population, number of unproductive consumer that increases, particularly people those who are below the age of 15 and above the age of 59, that increases more. Increase the dependent population. Countries like India, when there is a growing population, the rapid growth is there, population growth, that leads to increase the 15 years age of the population, and 69 or 59 population age of 59, they also depending on their family size. So unemployment also one of the factor that influence the population and economic development. Increase population growth, that constant rise in the labor force, more than availability of empowerment or opportunities, that leads to unemployment in the country. So when we observe, there are population burden and social expenditure also one of the reason. Population burden, social expenditure, increase in the population that needs heavy expenditure on education, particularly health facilities and transportation. More population is burden of social expenditures. Population and capital formation also influence the one of the or affect the population and economic development. Because population and capital, rapid growth of the population that adversely affecting the uh, capital formation due to large amount of population. So due to increase the demand for the resources for unproductive purpose, that results the low rate of capital formation, unfavorable effect also there. So the impact on economic development of the population. So the changes in the population that affect economic changes, changes in the economic conditions that affect in the changes of population, economic development. In other words, we can simply say that economic development that achieve the industrialized